Hi, welcome to my show entitled An Army Marches on Its Stomach 36. My name is PONEY CHIANG, and just a little bit about myself. I am the founder and director of an acupuncture program at York University in Toronto, and I also teach continuing education programs with ProD, which is now Healthy Seminars, run by one of our co-hosts, Lauren Brown. What I would like to share with you today is some of my latest research on the Neuro-anatomy of acupuncture points and how it pertains to acupuncture channel theory, but more importantly, also on De Qi sensation. The reason why I've entitled this presentation after Napoleon's saying is because Napoleon was known to say that army marches on the stomach, and as I'm sure everybody knows, stomach 36 in Chinese means leg 3 miles, and the story goes that if you stimulate that point, the army marches an additional 3 miles after they've become too tired to march any further. So it's kind of interesting. There is a little bit of that east-west sharing of that story there. Now, I would like to begin by just giving a general overview. Why is it that as acupuncturists we need to study acupuncture anatomy today? Well, first of all, a lot has changed in the neuroanatomy. To assume that research has kind of stopped in time, it was a little naive. The research that went behind elucidating the anatomical targets of acupuncture points that was done in China just after the time that the traditional Chinese medicine was standardized and institutionalized. It's been 50 years now, and so we have a lot of new information since then, but also the reference materials that are used by most anatomy schools or anatomy courses, which what I have in mind is Grant and Netters, those atlas are also not up to date. Did you know that it often takes 30 years of research before something actually makes it into a textbook? So there's a lot of information that is not being considered when the early Chinese researchers were trying to annotate the targets of acupuncture points. And what's the significance of this is that, first of all, there's obviously some safety implications. What are you putting a needle into? But from an efficacy standpoint, what are you actually stimulating? And if you don't have very precise information about the anatomy, then one can see how that can be a problem. There's another concept, point number 2, that I want to bring to your attention, and it's a concept called point drifting. Most of the acupuncture point locations that we learn in school are based on Chinese medicine classics from the Ming and Qing dynasty. But as you know, the Chinese medicine is much older than that, and we have acupuncture manuals going back to Han or just after the Han. Some of them we think are even older, but we don't actually have real proofs of that. So it's interesting if you were to compare the point location described 2,000 years ago versus 500 years ago, there are some differences in the location, and we call these differences point drifting. And so, of course, if we are learning point locations that are more influenced by the later texts, then its location would be a little different than the earlier classical texts, and therefore that would affect how we interpret what is the proper target of that point. Another reason why it's important to study anatomy today is that, believe it or not, there are actually information in Chinese medicine, acupuncture channel theory, that independently verify certain aspects of our peripheral nervous system that Western medicine has just in the last 10 years discovered in the last 10 years. So if somebody had taken the time to understand some of the channel theory described in the classics, it would actually help improve our state of knowledge about modern peripheral nervous system anatomy. Finally, the real reason from a practitioner standpoint is that when you put in a needle, and we learn in school that our intention is very paramount behind what we're doing, what is your intent when you put in that needle? What is it that you're trying to affect? If you don't have a very clear understanding of what is the target that you're trying to stimulate, then you're not going to be able to come to that treatment with a clear intention, clear mindset. But also, how are you going to know if you've properly stimulated a target or not? If we can understand the neuroanatomical structures underlying each acupuncture point, then based on its neuroanatomy, we will be able to not only predict what type of sensation the patient should feel, but we have a way to confirm it because the nervous system, if it's a sensory nerve, should give you paresthesia, numbness in a certain dermatomal distribution. If it's a mixed nerve comprised of motor nerves, and you apply electricity to it, and it innervates certain muscles downstream, then we'd be able to expect contraction of those muscles. So that is what I mean that understanding acupuncture anatomy today help us predict and then confirm the specific Deqi sensation. And I think we can all agree that Deqi sensation is thought to be the common denominator in how to make your treatments more efficacious. This slide here shows you your earlier acupuncture anatomy textbooks. This, as you can see, is talking about stomach 36. And notice the anatomy drawing is cross-sectional. Usually they're interested in showing you how the needle is, the trajectory of the needle and where it's actually ending up. And so this is obviously very much like how your typical anatomy textbook geared more towards a surgical worldview would be designed, but it actually is not written for the benefit of acupuncturists, and so which is why I felt there's a need for us as a community to do some research and provide atlases and references that would be useful as acupuncture clinicians. So I'd like to show you an example of what I mean. This is a research that's done a little bit more recently, published in 2010, and it was published in the Journal of Pain. The title of the paper is Traditional Acupuncture Triggers a Local Increase in Adenosine in Human Subjects. Adenosine is one of the precursors of ATP. And so therefore it should come of no surprise that these researchers decided to study acupuncture and adenosine levels using stomach 36, which is one of the key qi tonifying points in the body. And if you look at their paper, they took the time to confirm exactly what is being stimulated when you stick a needle into stomach 36. And this group, among others, have described that stomach 36 needle pathway is very close to the vicinity of the deep peroneal nerve. So if you take a look at the cross-sectional picture on the right side of the screen and follow the blue line, that blue line represents the acupuncture needle. And then you see sort of a neurovascular bundle, a red dot, yellow dot, and a blue dot. That is collectively, as the label shows, is the deep peroneal nerve and anterior tibial artery / vein. So in other words, stomach 36, Zusan Li, leg 3 miles, when you put a needle in there, we are actually stimulating the deep peroneal nerve and its associated neurovascular bundles. Now, even though this is becoming a little bit more precise than what was done in the earlier acupuncture atlases that I showed you on the previous slide, it doesn't truly help us, because if you were to imagine now stomach 37 and stomach 38, these needles would also seem to fall on deep peroneal nerve, then what would be the difference between stomach 36 and 37 and 38 then? So this is why there's a need to actually look at each individual point from the perspective of its unique neuroanatomical target. So what you're seeing now is a picture done by our group, and you can see there is what you're seeing here is that little retractor is retracting muscle A, which is the extensor digitorum longus, and muscle B is tibialis anterior. So when we put a needle at stomach 36, as you can see in the blue circle labeled stomach 36, we are actually affecting the deep peroneal nerve, right? Which, as you can see from the asterisk on the screen, That's the asterisk is the surgical head of the fibula. From behind the surgical head of the fibula, the common peroneal nerve divides. Common peroneal nerve, C for common peroneal nerve, divides to C1, C2, which is the deep peroneal nerve and the superficial peroneal nerve. So if you track C2 onwards using the dotted line, you end up at where stomach 36 is targeted. But stomach 36 is not just the deep peroneal nerve. It is very, very precise location in where the deep peroneal nerve trifurcates. What that means is that where the nerve divides into three different tributaries. Okay, so stomach 36 is important not just because the deep peroneal nerve itself, but it's actually a high density nerve junction. And it's interesting, if you look at the name Lake 3 miles, in Chinese, 足三里, we often translate as 3 miles, but the character for mile in ancient times also means interior or inside. So in other words, Lake 3 mile could also be interpreted as leg 3 inside. Perhaps it's a coincidence that there happens to be 3 very interesting trifurcations just inside of that point. Just a little bit of food for thought. We never really know what the ancients were thinking when they named these points, but sometimes these coincidences are worth mentioning. Now let's take a look from a different perspective to help orient you. There's a little legend on the left side of the top photo. You'll see that the anterior is the top of the screen, posterior is the bottom of the screen, and if you, to the left side of the screen is the distal or inferior, to the right side of the screen is superior. So what you're seeing is the lower leg, okay, where the knee is on the right side and the ankle is on the left side, okay, and so D, which muscle D in the picture, would be tibialis anterior, where you would stick a needle into stomach 36. Now let's take a more of a close-up zoom view to the lower photograph, and you'll see that once again, stomach 36, if you look at the right side of the lower photograph, is where the deep peroneal trifurcates. Okay, now we already know that, but what about stomach 37, stomach 38? What happens to the trifurcation? Well, stomach 37 is the branch that innervates the extensor digitorum longus, while stomach 38 is a branch that innervates extensor hallucis longus. With these muscles, respectively, innervates the extensions of the second to fifth toe, and as well as the big toe. So I find it pretty remarkable that ancient acu-anatomists, I'll call them, had this level of understanding, and when they passed down these points to us, they were really trying to tell us that each individual points is stimulating a very precise, unique target. Now I'd like to share with you a video of what I mean by you is now able to predict and confirm the stimulation. So these needles are now inserted into stomach 36, 37, and 38. They might seem a little lateral to you as to what we're used to learning in school, but I will explain that when I talk about the classical locations according to the Great Compendium, 针灸大成, how they actually tell us to needle a little bit more lateral. So in this video, first notice that when I stimulate stomach 36, you get dorsiflexion. You also get big toe and rest of toe flexion. Now, when you get to stomach 38, you only get the big toe extension. Okay, so the video was a bit too fast for me to be able to follow to describe it. So I'm going to play it again. First, you get everything: dorsiflexion, all the toes extending. Then you get only the second to fifth toe extension, and then you get only the big toe extension, which very nicely confirms for us. First, we have the trifurcations. We get tibialis anterior, extensor hallucis, extensor digitorum, then just extensor digitorum, and then just extensor hallucis. Now, I promise you, I will explain to you why the location is a little bit more lateral as it appear. Now you're looking at the traditional point description from the Great Compendium, 针灸大成, for stomach 36. And it reads that this point is located 3 cun below the knee on the outer surface of the shin bone, in the fleshy part of the major sinew, inside the separation between 2 sinews. So pay attention here. It means that we're supposed to palpate and feel for a separation between two sinews to where we put the needle. And I humbly think that this is the separation is where I've showed you the dissection, where the extensor muscle is retracted. That separation is actually between tibialis anterior and extensor digitorum longus. So we have in fact been needling right on tibialis anterior when it should actually be a little bit lateral between the flesh separation, or in modern terms, inter-muscular septum is where the needle ought to be. And then when you needle that, you can accentuate or obtain it by raising the foot. What that means is dorsiflexion, so that will accentuate the tibialis anterior. So it's giving us ideas on how to facilitate location. And the last line I think is the most interesting, because the last line says that if you apply extreme pressure at this point, stomach 36, okay, between the septum, it would cease the pulsation on stomach 42. Okay, it's very interesting that we have a location like information like this, that you basically are occluding a pulse distally to confirm your location. So if you look at the picture on the right side here, this is a little illustration taken from my book in progress with a Paradigm publication. And you'll see just familiarize yourself with where stomachs 36, 37, 38 would be. And notice that the yellow nerve is running together with a red vessel. That's the anterior tibial artery. And together they're called the anterior tibial neurovascular bundle. And if you continue the course of that artery down to the ankle, you'll see that it peeps through at stomach 41, and then it continues on to stomach 42. So if you were to actually apply so much pressure on stomach 32 that you're cutting off the blood flow from the shin area, then understandably the dorsal pedal pulse at stomach 42 will cease to pulse. Right? So this is actually anatomical proof that when you are needling stomach 36, you are trying to affect the neurovascular bundle formed by the anterior tibial artery. There is, I'm very thankful for the great compendium for describing the anatomy into such detail. Now, let's take this a little bit further, going from point location to channel theory. Okay? According to standard acupuncture channel theory, if you look at the picture on the right, stomach 36 is actually a point that the meridian diverges. And the theory is as follows. Stomach 36 is where the primary channel separates, running lateral to the main branch, ending on the lateral side of the third toe. Right? So I think what they're describing here is that they understand that the meridian that runs to the toes are independent from the innervation of the muscles that goes to the tibialis anterior in the muscle. So this is actually sort of indirect proof that when they describe the meridian channel theory, they're also letting us know that stomach 36 is a trifurcation point, that it then can have some effect on the nerves to the toes. Now I'm going to switch gear a little bit, but still in the topic of channel theory. Now I'm going to talk about Luo-connecting channel theory. As you all well know, the lower point for stomach channel is the Feng stomach 40, and the Neuro-anatomy for stomach 40 is actually the superficial peroneal nerve. So earlier when we were talking about stomach 36 trifurcation, we're talking about a deep peroneal nerve. But if there's a deep one, obviously there's a superficial one. So that nerve, which was once the common peroneal nerve, it divided from behind the fibula. And the superficial peroneal nerve goes on to innervate the pronator muscles. But after it's finished doing so, it emerges in between muscles B and C in the diagram, which is extensor digitorum longus and peroneus brevis, actually. Okay? And it emerges between two muscles. And if you continue the path of the nerve onto the top of the foot, you'll see that that nerve first divides, it bifurcates, and then it sends a branch towards the medial side or the big toe side of the foot. And what's the significance of this? The significance is that it's the stomach running towards the spleen, exactly as the channels theory would dictate that a lower point would connect interior and exterior. In this case, a yang stomach meridian connecting to a yin spleen meridian. The picture on the left here is taken from an adaptation from Gray's Anatomy, and if I can draw your attention to the arrow A on the top of the left image, you'll see that there's two nerves there, right? And so that was the bifurcation we saw earlier. And if you take the more medial one, following where the arrows points to stomach 42. The circle there, stomach 42 is an interesting fork in the road, if you will. It's a split point. And it continues straight on into the first wet space, but it also divides towards the medial aspect of the big toe. And in fact, almost all the way to the toenails. So this would be a perfect description of where spleen 2 and spleen 3 is located. Now, if you take a look at the dissection that we've done on the photograph on the right, you'll see exactly what I've just said so far. At stomach 42, we have branches. In fact, the Gray's Anatomy actually only shows one branch. In our dissection, we actually show that there's two branches happening here. And from stomach 42, it connects to spleen 3, and then continues on to the distal aspect toe, which is not exposed for the purpose of this photograph. So this is very, very mind-boggling and humbling, in my humble opinion, to make these discoveries that when we learn this channel theory, in this case about the lower collateral, and obviously due to limitation of time, I can't show you the results of all 12 meridians, all 12 lower channels, but all 12 lower meridians do exactly just this. They actually connect the anatomy exteriorly, interiorly, from the lateral to the medial, or if it's a yin meridian, lower collateral, from the medial to the lateral, with no exception. So just like to summarize the significance of this research and how it pertains to us as acupuncturists. It would appear that acupoints are surface coordinates for targeting unique peripheral nerves that the ancient anatomists have mapped out for us. So therefore, as acupuncturists, when we put in a needle, our intention is to target these very precise ramifications, or very precise divisions of nerves. And again, due to limitation of time, I cannot show you all my research, but I hope that gives you a little bit of flavor. And the only conclusion that I'm able to make without overextending my conclusions is that all these points are based on firm anatomical realities, and they even from the example from the Great Compendium, they tell us exactly what we're affecting. The reason why one should become interested in anatomy as an acupuncturist is because knowledge of the exact anatomical targets of the acupoints allows us to predict exactly what is the right touchy sensation that patient is supposed to feel. So for example, if we saw the slide on the previous page where the stomach 42 divides towards spleen 3, then the proper touchy sensation when you needle stomach 42 is to feel sensation in spleen 3. That's just as easy as it sounds, how you can apply this immediately clinically. Lastly, the importance of this research is that it, by appreciating the anatomical precision behind this information, we are no longer talking about east dash or east hyphen west integration. East is really the same as west. So I'd like to introduce the concept east equals west integration. And this hopefully allows acupuncture to be taken more seriously by skeptics, but also for us to have a common language to be able to communicate with our fellow allied health professionals and also the mainstream medical community. I thank you very much for your time. Please take the time to like, share, and comment this presentation. I really appreciate you joining me today. And don't forget to join us next week when Sam will be giving you